Welcome back to the channel, Kimyo and Space Cadets. This week I tried to give you a double review and I hope you enjoyed this one. So if you enjoyed the content of the video, consider sharing with friends. Now with that out of the way, let's move on to the title breakdown. Now first and foremost, I do want to shout out Sabito the Snow Leopard, who made a connection between the 5 pillars of Islam and the 5 pillars in Ordeal. His title breakdown is really insightful and I recommend you go watch it after this video. I'll link it in the description below. Now due to me not wanting to misinterpret any religion, I will be steering clear of that as well. Now the title of the episode is called Built on 5 Pillars. In the earlier chapter, we are made aware of K.O.D.E's limitations due to the 5 pillars operating outside of K.O.D.E jurisdiction while working in tandem with the organization, so closely to the point that they gain high-ranking Kimyo status. The diplomatic limitations enforced upon K.O.D.E does not apply to the 5 pillars, with Jin saying he's fought on the front lines for years during the declaration of war episode. So if the 7-headed lion are the leaders of K.O.D.E, the foundation to their information network would be that of the 5 pillars, allowing K.O.D.E to be able to strategize with the information that they would not have access to otherwise. As Thanatos kills the table members, K.O.D.E foundation would begin to crumble, which would allow Thanatos to gain the upper hand in the war to come. In Ordeal, information or the lack thereof caused people to think rationally or irrationally. In the Ronin era, Brent states to us that Shay and K.O.D.E have mutual understanding, but they would not impede on one another's progress, which would lead me to believe that Shay still holds the status of a pillar, giving him the diplomatic immunity he needs to pursue Thanatos. We do have the conditions made between the Jaythegodtier, which is the 3rd highest force, and Shay. They express their concerns with him having the Elder's Mantle, saying they may never find him once he leaves, giving him the conditions of being able to perform his duties but having to report to a S-rank Kimyo of his choosing, providing updates of his whereabouts. This allows him to maintain the diplomatic immunity status. Keep in mind, Shay naturally has diplomatic immunity to some degree, being a member of the Heart Clan, but this would not extend to matters regarding the UN. But it does mean he still could be trialed for his crime. But his second immunity protects him from even that, just going to show the political status Shay currently has. Keeping that status allows at least one pillar of K.O.D.E to be alive, whether on the best of terms or not, which would make sense on how Teva would have found him in episode 24 as well. Even in the scene, Shay has the Elder's Mantle on, meaning that his chi cannot be traced, going to show his chi is still undetectable at this time by most Kimyo. Thanatos this episode had began to build his strength and empire on the backs of the 5 pillars. So let me know your thoughts on the title, but with that out of the way, let's recap the events of the episode. As history's most dangerous, Kimyo stands smirking in front of 4 of the 5 pillars as Eric closes the data analytical device as he states, "Uni, listen to me carefully. Take this hard drive back to K.O.D.E and deliver it to Aldous Ross directly. Within lies all my research. I withheld publishing it due to the existence of a mole amongst us. Thanatos must not know the extent of our knowledge. Knowing what's to come, Uni can only look in silence as Eric continues. There are 743 possible ways for K.O.D.E to win. This war with Thanatos, now in possession of the Merlin Stone, our odds were reduced to 120. I just must read these vows. You cannot fail, Uni." Analyzing the best course of survival, Eric states, "As for us, with 1 man gone, we'll have to form a 3-man point, our second strongest formation." As he continues with, "We will be able to slow him down while you escape." Completely interrupting Eric's train of thought, Uni states, "Enough, Eric. Are you sending off one of your strongest blades?" As she questions Eric's methods, he counters her sentiment. "We were handpicked for our talent synergy. The first table is formidable foe, meant to stand together." Disregarding the Kimyo who are beneath him, Thanatos slightly moves his hands, being the first to see their imminent destruction. Eric responds quickly, screaming, "Maximilian Wall!" as a holographic hexagons form a barrier in front of him and his allies, as his talent revealed as Maximilian, a support talent type. It is nearly explained as the Maximilian Chi is known amongst K.O.D.E's ranks as nearly impregnable wall. Passed through the Edwards family, Sir Eric Edwards, 15th bearer of the Maximilian, is able to project chi in a small hexagonal shape. By combining these shapes, he's able to build walls with astounding durability and flexibility, appearing overhead behind Eric's shield as they are bombarded with Thanatos chi, so much so that it is making shock waves above the very barrier. As Jin blocks the force of the aftershock, he states, "Thanatos, monster of a talent. You were able to do this with only your mind?" Eric's wall barely held, slowly pointing towards the cattle before him. Thanatos states, "It's not the talent but the chi itself that resists me. Impressive. Applaud yourself. That in of itself is a feat. I too shroud myself in protective chi. This is why I understand the weakness all barriers possesses better than any. Pin, point, focus." As he shoots directly through the barrier, through Eric and Uni, severing her arms as Jin can only scream and worry. Eric, Uni, seeing themselves vulnerable, Tander says with great authority, Hothberg, hovering his hand over his weapon as he converts his chi to that of earth and water, smashing the very hammer on the ground while the mud surrounds Thanatos as Jin draws both blades in hopes that he can save his comrades as he states, Uni, if you can stand, get Eric to the airship now! Completely moving from sight with only traces of lightning and chi left, Uni can only stare in shock at the overwhelming force that she thought they was ready for, as her suit representing the white blood cells of healthy Kimyo society is now staring red, struggling to move. She says, Eric, come on, let me get you out of here. Even on his deathbed, he could only be true to himself and analyze the situation at hand, stating, if you move me, I'll die. Save strength for yourself. Uni, take the device and do what I asked. He won't let the ship escape. I'll protect your retreat with what I have left. As his life leaving quicker than he would like, he states, please do not resist my final wish. Thanatos must not consume all of our chi. You must live. Continuing in the war to come, Lord Heart must have at least one of us at his side, shedding tears for the comrades that she has shared and shed countless amount of time and blood with, as his final words to her is his farewell to Uni Taylor, using the last bit of his chi to protect the data and what would be the last surviving comrade. Disregarding the Kimyo that escaped Thanatos can only stand wondering, a wall of mud, the Hothberg talent. As he continues, I recall this one talent descendant of my brothers, Okinos. You possess immense elemental control, correct? Standing in a silent rage as talent is surging and only hint to his emotional state as his talent is explained as Hothberg, an elemental talent type, a 5-sided elemental talent. Through his body, Holder channels elemental combinations made up of water, earth, fire, wind, and electricity. He releases them as combinations of at least 2 elements at a time. Holder is equipped with 3 pieces of code tech designed to focus his channeling, a hammer, a backpack, and a shoulder cannon. As a slash hits Thanatos' arm guard as he notices, then blocks Grimboy Jin's assault. As Jin here is now emanating golden light with electrical chi surrounding him. As Thanatos states, oh, are you too quick for even time to follow? I am not familiar with this talent. It must be. Enraged at the loss of his comrades and the little efforts being put into blocking him, as his talent is explained as Havoc, a haste and power type. Furthering its explanation as Havoc is the haste talent that breaches time. Grimboy can propel himself several seconds into the future in short bursts. The blow delivered by his specially designed blade 9 fangs are especially devastating, as the weight of his attacks come from both the future and present. As Jin holds Thanatos' attention, Holder shoots a mass of compressed water and electricity towards him. Slightly averting his gaze to Holder attacks, he creates a shield of protective chi. As Holder has him on defense, Holder begins to mix more elements into his hammer as he states, Lord of Death, for many years we have prepared for your coming, as magma erupts from the ground, encompassing Holder, Thanatos, and his shield. As Holder says, this time I promise you will stay dead, as Thanatos waves his blade, pushing Holder back, as Holder begins to focus his chi into his hammer again, combining both wind and electricity in order to create 2 tornadoes representing a storm. As Thanatos says, Hothberg, your talent greatly infuriates me, as he lifts his hand, continuing with, you stand boldly as mockery of us? Your original fathers? Bow to me, and the weight of your punishment will be lighter. And the ground is lifted up by Thanatos' pure chi as Tander converts the tornadoes into an orb of protective wind and lightning. As Jin appears from what it seems to be the present, but his future from his perspective. A few seconds as Thanatos smiles from the future. How did it look? Slamming down with the force of the present and future as it all is for naught. Thanatos states, you use your premonitions to avoid your comrades' abilities, walking amongst the destruction, choosing perfect spots to place your feet. Great sinner, continuing with, I feel the weight of your blade before you even appear. A man who walks on time. The creator has gotten more creative. If it weren't for my foreknowledge, you might have been able to defeat me by yourself. As he radiates his blade with one more devastating swing, he continues, but every talent of haste originated from my brother K.O.D.E. It pushes Jin back while creating 2 parallel walls of chi, as he says, and whom do you suppose taught him the skills he used to develop his power? Weak mortal. Disregarding his own safety, Holder screams out to Grimbor as Jin can only say, "Holder, beneath you!" As we see Thanatos move directly below Tander, line of sight, as he says, "You dare take your eyes off me, Holtberg? Am I not enough?" Impaling Tander with ease, as Jin can only scream out to Holder, as Holder states, "Lord of Death, you better enjoy the air whilst you still breathe it." With only moments to live, Tander commands his talent one last time, saying, "Holtberg, fire and earth," as lava begins to bubble around the Lord of Death and crumbling the pillar of K.O.D.E, erupting with such force that the very land is left molten, as Jin can only scream, "Holder!" Emerging from the depths of the explosion, adjusting his armor, shaking off the move that was worth a lifetime of effort and struggle, as he says, "I knew the elements coursed through your body and created combinations within, but I did not expect you to be able to house much of it at once. Continuing with burning yourself to a crisp just to kill me, the sacrificial mindset of the first tape, prepared to die from the jump. I can somewhat respect it," as Jin can only look in shock at the friends he lost in mere minutes, as Thanatos says, "But it does not bear much fruit, does it? 2 of you are dead already. Does K.O.D.E think if they pile enough bodies at the door, I will be withheld from entering?" As we look over at the remains of Eric, who had used the last seconds of his life to ensure Junie and the data analytical device escape. Continuing with, "I cannot be stopped, Pillars of K.O.D.E. Gripping his blade tightly, Jin says, "Havoc," as it activates. "I thank you for showing me when my blade enters his heart." As he speed blitz even time itself, raining slashes down upon his forefather, with not only the weight of his responsibility, but the weight of the future and past. As Thanatos blocks his battle, he states, "You are the last to stand, and I see why. Your technique takes directly from my brother K.O.D.E. Your blows caused his body's pain, a sensation I have not felt in years, something I've come to enjoy. Completely composed," he continues, "If I underestimate you, you may take my head. Speed has always been the star amongst my mother's son, but do you know what was exalted itself over my brother's haste? The mind." As we see Jin get mutilated with minimum effort as he gains what may be his final resolve, as he screams, "Even so, the future never lies," gripping his blade with his mouth before it hits the ground, and in the same instance, being the first is Leo Thomas to damage Thanatos, piercing his heart as he says, "Remember the pain when he comes for you." As Thanatos places his hand on Jin's face, as Jin continues, "You will fall to the final pillar," then exploding before he can finish that statement, leaving only 2 pillars remaining as the episode of 139 of Ordeal comes to an end. Now, there is another concept as well, which is chi resisting Thanatos. Although this is not a new concept, we have prior examples of this. We have the aspects of this with Ashes of the Father not allowing vaal talent to gain dominion over his chi, which is a smaller instance for resistance for a specialized talent. We also have a defensive chi technique like rock armor, where you can send chi out from every pores of your skin, allowing you to resist damage from incoming attack, essentially creating a barrier of chi by having constant chi rushing outward. We then have an offensive way of using barriers in the story as well. When Shay creates Tomas, he layers his flame and chi around Tomas in order to mitigate its attack potency. This allowed him to create Tomas and squeeze it down to the size of a golf ball to make it his iconic attack. Now, compression type barriers so far can completely change the effects of the talent, considering the destructive potency of shaping Alcantillo while keeping the flame solid enough to clash with another object would suggest a layer of chi around it as well, which is why once Shay throws it, it explodes on impact rather than stay molded. We see Thanatos said that barriers' weakness are piercing attacks as well. We see back with Leo and his fight with Cain that a focus punch from Leo was enough to shatter that barrier. We do have the strongest barrier in Ordeal as Levi Davidson, who needs to stack his cubes, but each individual cube has infinite space between the beginning and the end of the small cube. Even if it's a pinpoint shot and it is accurate, it would still have to travel through that barrier, meaning that it would have to travel through infinity itself in regards to Levi's case. Now, this application of infinity for Levi's barrier will also make sense with the power scaling, since he is ranked higher than Eric and Eric's barrier, although both of them does use them, whether offensively or defensively, is a lot weaker than Levi's at its core. The next thing I would like to get into is the pillars and the talent. There are some things that we need to take into consideration. The first talent is Eric Edwards and his talent Maximilian. This talent is known as an impregnable wall passed down through the Edward family. Sir Eric is the 15th bearer of the Maximilian, and he's able to project chi in small hexagonal shapes. By combining these shapes, he's able to build walls with astounding durability and flexibility. It is a real simple ability and concept, but what is interesting is the shape that is formed by his talent. It's seeing barriers that are more powerful than others take a smaller shape. Now, when we look at the shield itself, the rate at which it comes out was less than a few seconds, which which makes it faster than Levi's barrier. Now, in regards to him being able to control his shape, we see that he chose the basic shape of a general wall between him and Thanatos. The initial chi wave that we see kill other Kimyos was reduced, although Jen stated it barely held. It seems that Eric barrier would get stronger the lower the area that he covers. We know that chi used defensively can increase the more chi that is used. Casting that same chi in a smaller area allows greater resistance for that barrier, which is why a generalized wave was able to block it even though the area is bigger than the wall itself. But a point blast pushed too much force into one spot for a one layer defense to overcome. We see this same instance with Shade Rock Hardener tanking a star level explosion multiple times when he's hit with a javelin, reflecting the piercing weight of a dead star. The rock hardening was useless. I want to show that the rule is absolute in regards to the defense in Ordeal. The resistance is only as good as the chi supplied to that defending area. We also know that with each generation, a talent gets weaker as it stays on the mortal plane of existence, as we see with Leif's statement about Elios, which would mean that Eric would have the weakest iteration of his talent. Now, me and Jay was chopping it up, and we both came to the conclusion that talent should recharge itself once it spends time in the ether, and if a talent and the soul are connected, chi will be the battery in order to keep the talent on the planet. The longer it's on the mortal plane, it loses its charge as that battery, thus making it weaker. Which is why Kong and Kirin are mythological talents, but do not show any evidence of being weaker, but it's held back by the Kimyo and experience, which is a topic for another time. Next is the fourth strongest pillar, which is Tander. His talent is called Hofberg. It is an elemental talent that is derived from Okino. It is explained as a five-sided elemental talent. Through his body, Holder channels elemental combination made up of water, earth, fire, wind, and electricity. He releases them as combinations of at least 2 elements at a time. We also have him utilizing technology to further enhance his powers, using a hammer, a backpack, and a cannon. Now, Tander has to channel his chi through his hammer. Then once his chi is expelled, the backpack works in tandem with the hammer in order to store the element so that he can expel it with even more force than he could without it. The cannon allows him to compress and shoot out elements like a bullet. However, when we look at the volume of water that is shot at Thanatos, we see that he actually compresses water. There are other things he used, such as combining earth and fire to make lava. The difference is that he didn't shoot any of it out of the cannon, which leads me to assume that this technique would destroy his equipment in regards to the lava portion. So he can use the cannon as long as he shoots the right elements out of it, which is why there is nothing left of the equipment after the explosion. He does have the ability to create miniature storms that can be freely formed and manipulated by him, which we see it go from a tornado to an orb of protective element. The storm would be a triple combination. We see clouds and the black pack, which would lead me to assume it's a combination of water, wind, and lightning. He could use combination of different elements, which would make him the most versatile but the second weakest to damage output. Now, I do want to speculate on some things Tander element can combine to make. For example, create a water explosion by heating up water molecules so much so that it causes that explosion. We got divergent tactics with steam, which he could use fire and water for. We could have him use water and air to make ice, or even use earth and lightning to make glass shield. Now, in Ordeal, the older you are, the weaker your chi limit becomes. With his death, he Chaosu's himself and does nothing to Thanatos, so now he's unable to stack as much of the elemental power that he could before, which is why the last instance we see the talent leak out from his back as it's released from his body and then blows himself up. The blast didn't even damage Thanatos' clothes, which I will discuss after the pillars. Next, we have Grimboy Jin and his talent Havoc. Now, this will be the science section of the review. Now, his ability is a haste type that allows him to breach time. Grimboy can propel himself several seconds into the future in short bursts. The blow delivered by his specially designed 9 fangs are especially devastating as it holds the weight of the future and present. Now, first, let's talk about breaching time in several seconds. It seems that he used his speed to force himself out of the timeline completely at the speed of light or quicker, which is something that Jay said in his review. But let's take it a bit further. Now, once he exits the timeline, he shouldn't be able to see the events of the timeline, given that he will reside at a higher dimensional plane. He would not be able to discern the events or locations of any specific given area. So what would be the thing that allows him to both avoid his comrade's attack, tell where the enemy is, and what could affect something going as fast as him? The answer is gravity. Jay says his talent will come from the future or the past, which I only agree with the past more so than the future. If we say the talent breached time itself, allowed Jen to be born with it, that would mean that the talent itself utilized itself in the ether, which is fine, but time itself doesn't flow backward. It will be unable to come from the future if the talent only propels itself to the future, which would lead me to believe that it came from the past. The only thing that can travel through the past and the future is not time as we understand it now, but more so gravity itself. We see that chi is what can give things the property of gravity as well, meaning Jin is unable to see when he is moving at high speed, but is using chi as a point of gravity to re-enter the timeline while also discerning where it is safe to stand by reading the chi of both his allies and his opponents as well. This will also allow him to deliver pinpoint strikes with his blade. Now, him delivering the blow from both the present and the future would make sense with what we see when he's outside of the timeline. When he's able to make slashes on Thanatos, going to show that he is attacking from the future in the present since his body hasn't appeared yet. Essentially, both blades holding two different sets speed but similar weight. Now, being outside of time would make this ability hard to defend against. The difference between Havoc and Kirin is that Kirin is able to make a Zom think relative to his speed, similar to Barry Allen, but generally limited to the normal speed of thought. When Thanatos says that the mind is weakness of haste users, it's perfect for accounting for Jin. Now, we're gonna get into a bit of theoretical physics. Scientists speculate that time is the next dimension, meaning the fourth plane of existence. Now, for Jin to travel through the fourth dimension puts his talent on a higher dimension plane than most, which would be the reason he had the advantage when his talent isn't known already. But even with the blind side being revealed, it wouldn't be much you can do if your talent does not manipulate time to that degree. But scientists speculate that thought is in the dimension higher than our own, which is why we can't see thought. Let's say Thanatos saying essentially using the intervals between Jin jumping from a 4D reality for a few seconds, and as he goes back down to a 3D reality, Thanatos uses his thought, which is approximately 3.5D, to speed blitz Jin's perception of reality, essentially giving Jin a taste of his own medicine with a dimensional blitz. Keep in mind, 3.5D is still higher than 3D, so when he is forced back to his reality, Thanatos uses the ability at a higher dimension when Jin least suspects. This is why, even though he sees the future, he was still surprised that he took damage. He gets a line saying the future is never wrong, going to reflect Ronin. Now, with Thanatos, he did have prior knowledge and said multiple times he could have lost if he didn't, but one thing that is interesting is that the barrier technique cannot be incorporated at the same time as rock hardening. If Thanatos see an attack, he incorporates a shield, being able to block the attack from even reaching his skin with pinpoint accuracy. But when it comes to the attack Jin posed outside the timeline, he was not able to perceive it, so he couldn't hold up the shield to block it accurately, which would mean that the shield wouldn't be a viable option. So as the slash began to touch his skin and his armor, he started using the rock hardening technique, which is subtle. This is why he said that Jin could damage him with his talent but did not have any physical damage on him. We also know material can hold chi, which would mean that he even added chi to his own clothing to increase durability, which is why Tander was not able to burn his clothes, even though he attacked him with point blank lava. Now, I do want to talk briefly about the fight and how it would go down if Eric didn't die, which is the foundation to the three-man formation. Tander cannot attack and defend at the same time. While going in and out of higher dimensions, Jin leads his team while also applying subtle attacks from outside reality and then returns back to reality, which would mean as each person attacked, Eric would use a condensed shield in order to protect the tank and DPS, which makes him the support talent that he is, which is the most important type for fighting stronger enemies because it gives you survivability, which is why Tander had to protect himself instead of focusing on damage in Jin as well. Tander and Jin doesn't play a big part of defense, but we see that Eric is able to project his talent a few dozen feet and project his shield outward to cover a multitude of distance horizontally. So that would mean he would be able to read when Jin re-enters the timeline or to shield Jin and Tander from incoming attack. Now, I am a bit disappointed with us not getting at least 2 chapters of the Pillars fighting. Alpha Teacher had multiple episodes. Only thing I can think of that could possibly justify this is that Brent does not want to reveal too much of Thanatos. The more that gets applied to the concept of chi, we conceptualize